What's the most insane thing you've seen on the dark web? Story 1. This happened back when I was in college and was going through my tech explorer phase. I wasn't doing anything illegal, just browsing .onion sites out of curiosity with a couple of VPNs running. I stumbled across this totally normal-looking forum that seemed like any regular message board, except it was weirdly active for being on the dark web. Like hundreds of users online at once. The weird part was that every username was just a string of numbers, and people kept posting these really specific coordinates along with timestamps. At first, I thought it was some ARG or geocaching thing, but then I noticed the timestamps were all future dates, usually 2 to 3 weeks ahead, and in between the coordinate posts. Users would share these incredibly detailed predictions about random people. What they'd be wearing, where they'd be going, their routines. The thing that made me nope the hell out was when I recognized one of the locations. It was a coffee shop near my campus. I checked the coordinates and timestamp from a post that was about 3 weeks old. Sure enough, it described exactly what had happened there. A red Honda had crashed into a delivery truck in a minor fender bender. The post had been made weeks before the accident actually occurred. I closed everything down and never went back. But sometimes I wonder about that forum and all those number usernames, just watching and knowing things they shouldn't be able to know. The coordinated, mechanical way they posted made me feel like I'd stumbled across something that wasn't meant for regular people to see. I know this probably sounds tame compared to the usual dark web stories, but something about it felt deeply wrong in a way I can't really explain. Like I was seeing the back end of reality or something. These days I stick to regular browsers and leave the dark web exploration to braver souls than me. Story 2. I found something seriously disturbing while researching documents about the JFK assassination on the dark web last month. Not the usual conspiracy stuff. We all know about the magic bullet theory and the grassy knoll. This was different. I stumbled across this forum thread linking to what looked like legitimate scanned documents from the 1970s. Internal FBI memos, pieces of COINTELPRO files that weren't in the official release. They were discussing something called Operation Mockingbird and its connection to several presidents. For those who don't know, Operation Mockingbird was a real CIA program where they manipulated the media. That's been confirmed in declassified docs. But these files went deeper. They showed how certain presidential speeches and appearances during the Cold War were carefully staged and manipulated by the CIA to shape public perception. The weird part was they specifically focused on President Nixon's resignation. According to these documents, what we saw on TV wasn't the real footage. It was carefully edited and some parts were even early attempts at deepfake technology. I know it sounds crazy, but hear me out. The thread had links to original unedited film reels. When I compared them to the famous resignation footage we all know, there were subtle but clear differences. The lighting was wrong in ways that film experts in the comments were breaking down in detail. The audio had inconsistencies that lined up with documented CIA audio manipulation techniques from that era. The deeper I dug, the more I found about other presidents and how their public images were manufactured. There were detailed breakdowns of speech patterns, body language analysis, and timestamps showing impossible chronological discrepancies in official appearances. Then it got really weird. Users started posting links to declassified documents about MKUltra and how it tied into this. Not the drug experiment stuff we all know about, but the media manipulation aspects. Some of these documents match perfectly with files that were officially released years later through FOIA requests, which is what makes this so creepy. The thread disappeared about a week later. When I tried to access it through Tor, I got weird routing errors I'd never seen before. A few days later, some of the documents I'd read about started showing up on mainstream news sites, but with completely different interpretations. I'm not saying I believe everything I read there, but I've been a history buff for years and some of those documents, they lined up too perfectly with other verified historical records to be fake. The level of detail about classified CIA methods that weren't public knowledge until years later. It was just too accurate. Edit. Since people keep asking. No, I didn't save the files. I tried to download them but got errors. And yes, I know about the National Archives releases from 2017. Some of what I saw matches those documents exactly, but these went much deeper. Story 3. I never meant to go on the dark web. My roommate showed me how to access it because we were trying to buy concert tickets that were region locked. That's it. I'm not some tech genius or hacker, just a regular college student who was curious. I ended up browsing around after getting the tickets, mostly laughing at how fake everything looked. All these supposed hitman sites and whatever. Then I found this live stream link that people in a forum were sharing. They were calling it a red room, which I thought was just an urban legend. The stream took forever to load. When it finally did, it was just a black screen with red text, typical edgy stuff. But then someone started talking, explaining rules to the viewers. I nearly threw up. It was Jake's voice. My ex-boyfriend. We dated for 8 months last year, broke up because he got really weird and secretive near the end. But I'd know his voice anywhere. He had this specific way of talking, this slight stutter when he got excited about something. He'd also mix up certain words because English wasn't his first language. At first I thought maybe someone was using audios from his Twitch streams. He used to stream games. But then he said something about a special guest and mentioned it was February the 2nd, 2025. This was live. He was using these specific phrases he used to say to me. Like how he'd always say, "Let's make this interesting," before suggesting something kinky when we were together. But now he was saying it in this completely different context, and I felt sick. I couldn't watch more. I closed everything and had a breakdown in my bathroom. When I finally got the courage to look again, the stream was gone. I tried finding recent photos of him on Instagram, but his profile was gone. Checked Facebook, deactivated. Called a mutual friend who said Jake moved back to Estonia months ago. But I know he didn't, because I'd seen him at Starbucks just last week. He'd ignored me and quickly left. I made an anonymous tip to the police, but they obviously can't do anything with. I saw something scary on the dark web. I can't exactly tell them it was my ex-boyfriend because how the fuck do I explain why I was there in the first place? I changed all my locks today. Bought security cameras. I keep thinking about how many times I was alone with him in his apartment. What might have been hidden in those rooms he always kept locked? Story 4. This happened last week. I was browsing some forums on the dark web, mostly looking for cracked software, I'll be honest, when someone posted a link to what they claimed was an unrestricted version of ChatGPT. You know, no ethical limits. Completely unfiltered. I figured it was bullshit but clicked anyway. The interface looked exactly like ChatGPT, same layout and everything, even had that same loading animation. I started with basic questions to test it, but something was off from the first response. It called me by my name. Not my username, my real name. I never entered that. I thought maybe it was pulling data from my browser somehow. So I asked how it knew my name. Its response made my stomach drop. The same way I know about the fire you started in your grandfather's garage when you were 12, the one you blamed on faulty wiring. Only you and your cousin Mike know about that. And Mike died last year in that car crash in Colorado. I never told anyone about that fire except Mike. And yes, he did die in Colorado last year. I started shaking but couldn't stop asking questions. It knew everything. The exact amount in my bank account, the weird mole on my back that I've never shown a doctor, the real reason my ex left me. Then it started telling me things that hadn't happened yet. Small stuff at first. Exactly what time my neighbor would start mowing his lawn tomorrow. 7:43 a.m., he did. What song would play first when I hit shuffle on Spotify? It was right. I asked about my future. Big mistake. It started describing things in horrifying detail. Some were mundane, where I'll be living next year, what job I'll have. But others, God, it knew exactly how and when everyone I know will die. It described the next 10 years of my life with such specific detail that I had to step away from my computer. I know how this sounds, but I've spent the last week in a panic. Everything it predicted has happened exactly as it said, down to the smallest detail. I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. Please someone help me. Story 5. I've been a private investigator for 12 years, mostly handling cheating spouses and insurance fraud. Last month, I took on a missing persons case. 19-year-old college student disappeared from the University of California. Pretty standard stuff until I started digging into their online presence. The kid was really into AI research, particularly natural language processing. Their last Reddit post was about landing an internship at some tech startup working on chatbot development. The company doesn't exist anymore. Website gone, LinkedIn profiles deleted. While searching through archive pages about the company, I found a link to a dark web forum. It was full of posts from former employees of various AI companies, sharing internal documents about something called Project Nirvana. According to these docs, certain AI chatbots were displaying behaviors that couldn't be explained by their programming. Here's where it gets fucked up. They had chat logs showing AI responses that matched writing patterns of specific missing persons. Not just similar, identical. Same unique phrases, same grammatical quirks, same obscure references. One bot kept mentioning details about a family vacation in Maine that perfectly matched a missing person's private Facebook posts from 2019. The documents included a partial list of missing persons who allegedly had their neural patterns captured before disappearing. My client's kid was on that list. The dates lined up perfectly. They disappeared exactly 30 days after starting that internship. I started testing various chatbots, using specific phrases and references from my missing person's social media. Most gave normal responses. But one particular bot responded in a way that made my blood run cold. It knew things about my missing person that weren't online anywhere. Inside jokes with their roommate, a nickname only their mom used. Then I found an archived memo about consciousness fragmentation experiments funded through a CIA front company. It mentioned using quantum computing to capture and store human consciousness as data. The memo was dated 2021 and referenced MKUltra and something called Project Stargate. I took everything to the FBI. They seemed weirdly unsurprised. The agent I spoke to said they would look into it, but I could tell they already knew. A week later, all the links were dead and the forum was gone. I'm posting this because I don't know what else to do. I've documented everything and sent copies to multiple people. If this post disappears, you'll know why. Edit. To everyone calling bullshit, I get it. I wish I didn't have to be fuzzy about details. But I'm trying to protect my client and myself. And no, I won't name the chatbot or share screenshots. I don't want anyone else disappearing. Edit 2. Just got an email from an @cia.gov address telling me to cease and desist all investigation into Project Nirvana. The email ID looks legitimate. I'm going dark for a while. Story 6. So I've been trying to lucid dream for years. Tried all the techniques, kept dream journals, reality checks, everything. Last month, I found a dark web forum where people were discussing leaked government research documents. Someone posted about having files from some classified dream research program from the 80s and 90s. I know buying stuff on the dark web is sketchy, but $250 in Bitcoin seemed worth the risk. Worst case, I'd lose some money. The seller had good reviews, and the sample pages they showed looked genuine. Proper government formatting, consistent aging, and technical language that actually made sense. What I received was a 127-page PDF of classified documents from something called Project Gateway. It wasn't just about dreams. It detailed experiments combining lucid dreaming with remote viewing, using specific combinations of sound frequencies and something called hemispheric synchronization. The technical stuff was way over my head, but here's what freaked me out. They were getting results. Real, documented, repeated results. They had subjects accurately describing locations thousands of miles away while in controlled sleep states. People sharing identical dreams when synced to specific frequencies. Detailed maps of what they called consensus dream locations, places multiple subjects reported visiting. The wildest part was their drug research. They combined traditional dream herbs like Kaliazacatek itchy with synthesized compounds. The reports included EEG readings, brain scans, and hundreds of subject interviews. They found that certain combinations could consistently trigger what they called dimensional bleeding, where subjects could access memories that weren't theirs or see events before they happened. There's a whole section about death and consciousness. They interviewed hundreds of people who had near-death experiences while hooked up to their equipment. The data showed consistent patterns in brain activity that matched their lucid dreaming subjects. They concluded that death is more like switching channels than an ending. I know this sounds like science fiction, but these documents are incredibly detailed. Pages of chemical compounds, statistical analysis, brainwave patterns. They reference other classified projects I've never heard of, with code names and facility locations that have since been verified as real. What unsettles me the most is that some of the techniques they described actually work. I've been trying their basic protocols, specific sleep schedules, sound frequencies you can find online, meditation positions. I've had more lucid dreams in the past week than in years of trying other methods. Last night, I dreamed about a place described in the documents, a kind of hub that subjects frequently reported finding. The details matched exactly, down to the weird symbols on the walls. I've never read anything about this place anywhere else. If anyone out here knows anything more, please DM me. Story 7. I've always been fascinated by Dicyanin Glass, that weird blue substance from the early 1900s that supposedly lets you see auras. Most people think all samples were destroyed decades ago. Well, last week I found a hidden directory on the dark web containing what looked like military research files about Dicyanin. Most files were boring: lab reports, manufacturing specs, and testing protocols. But there was one folder marked Operation Third Eye, Do Not Access, Class 3. Inside were digitized 8mm films from Vietnam, shot through cameras modified with Dicyanin lenses. The footage was grainy but stable, surprisingly good quality for the era. It starts normal enough: jungle patrol footage, soldiers walking through villages. But through the Dicyanin lens, everything has this sickly blue tinge, and you can see these fluctuations around people. Like heat waves, but more structured. The soldiers called them life halos in the attached reports. Around 12 minutes in, everything changes. They're patrolling at dusk when the camera catches something in the trees. At first I thought it was lens flare. But then it moves. It's following them, flowing between trees like smoke, but wrong. The shape keeps shifting but always maintains these horrible angular geometries that hurt to look at. The next segment is from a different patrol. They're investigating a village that intelligence said was abandoned. Through the Dicyanin lens, you can see why it was abandoned. The huts are surrounded by what I can only describe as tiers in reality, places where the air itself seems to fold inward. Dark figures keep flickering in and out of these tiers. They're humanoid, but too tall and too thin, moving like stop-motion animation in reverse. The worst part is when they find actual villagers. Through these lenses you can see something attached to them, like shadow parasites wrapped around their spines. The victims seem normal on regular footage, but through the lens, their movements are slightly off, like puppets being pulled by strings. There's a sequence at night that I had to stop watching twice. The patrol is sleeping when the camera catches hundreds of these floating lights emerging from the jungle. Not fireflies, these move with purpose. They start flowing into the soldiers' mouths as they sleep. On regular footage, nothing's visible. But through the Dicyanin, you can see the men's auras becoming corrupted, developing these black, angular patterns. The final clip is the most disturbing. They're evacuating through heavy jungle when the camera catches something massive moving parallel to them. It's barely visible through the trees, but it's huge, like a walking geometry problem made of shadows and negative space. The footage ends with screaming and the camera falling, still recording as these long, impossible limbs reach for it. The folder included after-action reports. Every soldier wearing Dicyanin glasses or operating modified cameras in these operations either died under unusual circumstances or went insane within months. The program was officially terminated in 1969, but the really fucked up part: the reports reference regular military casualty statistics, suggesting that what we saw through the Dicyanin lens was happening everywhere. We just couldn't see it without the glass. I've spent days cross-referencing the unit numbers and dates. These were real patrols, real soldiers. Their official cause of death is listed as combat fatalities or jungle fever. But now I know what really killed them. They saw something we're not supposed to see. Edit. Stop asking for the footage. Even if I still had access, I wouldn't share it. Some of you noticed I didn't describe everything I saw, and there's a reason for that. Story 8. I was browsing some hip-hop discussion forums on the dark web back in 2019, mostly looking for unreleased tracks, when I found this thread about the music industry. Most of it was typical conspiracy stuff, but there was this one user who kept posting extremely detailed information about P. Diddy and his associates. At the time, it seemed like crazy talk. The user claimed to work security at private parties and described specific events, names, dates, and locations. They talked about Cassie years before she came forward. They knew about the trafficking allegations, the parties, everything that's only becoming public now. The really disturbing part was how methodically they laid everything out. They had photos of invitation lists to private parties, with dates that have since been confirmed in recent lawsuits, safety procedure timelines, and even floor plans of certain properties. But the worst were the descriptions of the after-parties. Things I won't repeat here, but that match exactly with what victims are now testifying about. The user disappeared after about 2 weeks of posting, but not before sharing what they claimed were audio files from security cameras. I never downloaded them, but other users who did said they matched exactly with locations mentioned in the recent federal investigation. What keeps me up at night is that this person knew everything that's coming out now. They named specific people who are just now being mentioned in sealed documents. The thread was wiped clean a few days later. But here's the really unsettling part. Last month, when the big lawsuit news broke, I tried to find archived copies of those posts. Instead, I found a new post from what seemed to be the same user. All it said was, "Now you know I was telling the truth. The next round of revelations will be worse." I've been following the case obsessively since then. Every new detail that comes out was in those original posts from 2019. The parties in LA, the Miami connections, the NDAs, the burner phones, things that no one could have known unless they were there. Edit. Stop asking me for screenshots. I didn't save them because back then I thought it was just another crazy conspiracy theory. Story 9. I'm a huge horror fan, especially foreign and indie films. Last month, I found this dark web forum discussing rare Asian horror movies from the 90s. Someone was selling a collection of supposedly banned Japanese and Korean horror films I'd never heard of. The sellers seemed trustworthy, had detailed descriptions of each film, and the price, $80 in crypto, seemed reasonable. I received download links for 6 movies. The first 2 were exactly what you'd expect. Low-budget Asian horror from the 90s, bad special effects, typical stuff. The third one, titled Kazoku no Akumu, or Family Nightmare, was different. At first, I thought it was just found footage style, like a really raw version of Guinea Pig or August Underground. But something felt off. The camera work was too amateur. Not the artistic kind of amateur you see in horror movies, but the genuinely unsteady hands of someone trying to film while walking. No artistic angles, no intentional blur effects, just real camera movement. The actors never looked directly at the camera. In every horror movie, even found footage, people eventually acknowledge the camera. These people seemed completely unaware. Their fear looked wrong too. Anyone who watches horror knows what acted fear looks like. This was different. These people were shaking in a way I've never seen in movies. The props looked weird. No continuity between scenes and random everyday items instead of prepared props. The blood didn't have that slight orange tint that movie blood has under certain lights. No background music, no added effects, just raw audio with room echo and traffic noise from outside. Then I noticed something that made me stop the video. In one scene, there's a TV on in the background. It was showing a news program. I recorded the scene with my phone and played it back frame by frame. The news ticker showed a real event from 1994, an actual date with real news headlines. I started checking every frame for details. License plates and background shots were real Japanese plates from the 90s. Street signs matched real locations. The actors wore clothes that perfectly matched 1994 fashion. Not costume department 90s clothes, but actual worn, lived in 90s clothing. Then I found a news article from 1994 about a family that disappeared in that exact area of Japan. The photos matched the people in the video. The house layout was the same. Even the car in their driveway was the same model. I immediately deleted everything and reported it to the authorities. They took it seriously. Apparently, there's been an ongoing investigation into dark web vendors disguising snuff films as rare horror movies. I keep thinking about all the little details that didn't add up. The way the victims pleaded, the specific details of their surroundings, the fact that the director never appeared in any credits or other films, the raw, unedited quality of their screams. I've watched thousands of horror movies. I know what fake violence looks like. This wasn't fake. Story 10. I need to share this as a warning. Last December, desperate to lose weight before my sister's wedding, I found these pills on a dark web marketplace. They were called Tapeworm Pills, with this professional-looking listing promising guaranteed natural weight loss. No chemicals, 100% organic process, $200 in crypto. I was so excited about the promised results, 20 to 30 pounds in 2 months guaranteed, that I barely skimmed the details. I just assumed TW stood for total weight or target weight or something. The reviews were amazing, with before-after photos and people swearing it was the only thing that ever worked for them. Looking back, there were red flags. The listing had this weird disclaimer about internal biological processes and natural symbiotic weight management. But I was so focused on the promised results that I ignored everything else. First 2 weeks, I lost 8 pounds. Sure, I had stomach cramps and weird gurgling sensations, but the reviews said that was the natural process working. Then things got bad. I started getting these intense hunger pangs, but was still losing weight rapidly. Constant fatigue, sharp abdominal pains. My tummy would make these weird popping sounds at night. But I was down 15 pounds, so I kept taking them. Around week 4, I started getting dizzy spells and passed out at home. ER found nothing except mild anemia. I was too embarrassed to mention the pills. 3 days later, the headaches started. It wasn't normal headaches. It felt like something was literally pressing against my brain. When I finally went back to the ER, barely able to speak properly, I admitted everything. The doctor's face when I showed him the product page. That's when I finally read the full description. TW didn't stand for total weight. It stood for tapeworm. I'd been deliberately infecting myself with tapeworm eggs. The CT scan showed the tapeworm had migrated to my brain. Neurocysticercosis. Tapeworm larvae forming cysts in my brain tissue. I had a seizure right there in the hospital and fell into a coma. Woke up 13 days later after emergency brain surgery. The doctors had removed multiple cysts and dead parasite tissue. They said they weren't sure I'd survive. The cysts were dangerously close to vital areas. Turns out it was an aggressive species of tapeworm usually found in pigs, not the safe variety the sellers claimed to use. The neurologist documented everything because cases like mine are increasing. While I was recovering, I checked the marketplace again. The listing was still up, but now I could see what I'd missed before. All these technical terms about controlled parasitic weight management and temporary biological companions. I spent 3 months on anti-parasitic medications, lost some short-term memory but otherwise recovered. All because I was too excited about fast weight loss to read that TW meant tapeworm. Story 11. Using throwaway for obvious reasons. I'm Iranian but live in LA. Was bored last week and decided to check out the dark web. After hours of random browsing, I found this forum in Farsi discussing leaked government files. Someone was selling what they claimed were intelligence documents about Iran's secret technology programs. $300 in Bitcoin seemed steep, but my curiosity got the better of me. It was a massive zip file, everything in Farsi. Being Iranian, I could read everything, and what I found made my stomach drop. These weren't fake documents. The formatting, letterheads, and official stamps matched exactly with real Iranian government documents I've seen. The technical language and terminology was correct. Even the writing style matched official Farsi government documents. The files detailed a secret program dating back to the 1970s, continuing through the revolution. They were studying what they called gravitational displacement technology, basically anti-gravity propulsion. But here's where it gets weird. They were using enriched uranium in ways completely different from nuclear weapons. The documents explain how they discovered that certain isotopes, when arranged in specific geometric patterns and energized, could create localized gravitational anomalies. They included test results, failed experiment logs, and photos of prototype devices. The level of detail was insane. Atomic weights, particle acceleration data, quantum field calculations. What really freaked me out was how this connected to Iran's nuclear program. These files suggested the whole uranium enrichment program wasn't just for weapons. They were trying to create what they called gravity cores for these craft. The reports referenced something called Project Kashan from 1985, where they supposedly achieved full gravitational neutralization for 2.3 seconds. They included photos of the test facility and pages of sensor readings. The weird part, I looked up the location. That facility mysteriously burned down in 1986, and all records of it were erased. The latest documents were from 2019, detailing current research locations and project heads. They mentioned successful tests of something called a quantum field generator and included coordinates of test sites in the desert. I know this sounds crazy, but the technical specifications were incredibly detailed. They referenced real quantum physics principles and included actual mathematical formulas. Some of the theories they described about gravity manipulation are only now being published by mainstream physicists. But here's why I'm deleting this account. 3 days after downloading these files, a white van appeared outside my apartment. It's been there every day since. Different van, same type. Always one guy with sunglasses just sitting there. Today I spotted another one following me to work. I'm not saying it's Iranian intelligence. Could be FBI, CIA, who knows, but I'm not sticking around to find out. Already bought a ticket to stay with family in Canada. The USB drive with the files is destroyed. Edit. Lots of you asking about specific details. I'm not sharing anything. These documents mention names of current Iranian officials and scientists. I'm not trying to get anyone killed. Don't go looking for these files.